everybody, and welcome to another Player 2 review discussion. My name is Matt Houston, and I am joined by fellow lifetime Player 2 editor Stephen Del Prado. How are you, mate?
I'm good. I'm pretty good.
Pretty good. Well, you're good now, I feel, is the thing, because
It's
you've
like there's
you've.
a weight off my shoulders somehow.
For those that are listening on the podcast and don't realise, we're going to talk about Sonic Frontiers, the newest Sonic game from Team Sonic. And look, it's fair warning, probably not going to be the happiest of chats, would be fair to say, wouldn't it, Stephen?
Definitely not. For a number of reasons which we'll get into. But if you want the TLDR, don't buy Sonic Frontiers.
So just to give some clarity, Stephen has finished the game and is writing the review for us. I've played about 5, maybe 6 hours of it, and I'm just here for color commentary, really. So Stephen's going to give us most of the detail. But for those that don't know, Sonic Frontiers is an open-ish world Sonic game with levels stolen from other 3D and 2D Sonic games mixed in, is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it's like a weird mishmash. It honestly feels like a game that isn't quite sure what it wants to be, and feels like it had a few very last minute adjustments and changes done to it. And
Mm.
those sort of become apparent the more you make your way into it. So as you've intimated, it's an open world Sonic game. We all know how great those have been in the past, 3D Sonic games, lots of held in high regard, we could say. Um, by Sonic fans and laymen alike. No, 3D Sonic has sucked universally since the Dreamcast, and I wouldn't even be able to fill up one hand with good 3D Sonic games. Maybe
I
Sonic
think
3D.
Generations was pretty
Generations
good.
is solid.
Yeah,
Generations is probably the pinnacle of 3D Sonic.
yeah,
Still, having wrapped up Sonic Frontiers now.
yeah.
So, where to start? Nonsensical storyline. I guess if you're neck deep in Sonic lore, there might be a few moments in it that you'll be like, "Hey, I remember that from when I was 7 and played a Sonic game." So I loved Sonic on the Master System. That was literally my first gaming experience. We didn't have Nintendo money, baby. We had Sega Master System money, as did most poor people in Australia. Thank you, Aussie Soft. So we had Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 on the Master System, and I absolutely loved those games. I remember getting Sonic 2 as a birthday present and losing my mind. And, you know, then when you could finally play things like Sonic Chaos and stuff like that, it was a great time. And Sonic was amazing as a 2D game. And even though I love my Dreamcast, Sonic Adventure was not one of my favorite games on there. I think they lost something in that translation that Mario was able to sort of overcome and occupy two very separate spaces. And Sega never quite got there with Sonic. So as you said, Sonic Frontiers is ostensibly an open world game. It's open world in that you have basically three very distinct areas to travel through, one of which I strongly suspect was later cut into three parts to make three separate levels to stretch out the runtime. And it is sparse, is a nice
Mm.
way to describe the open world in this game. There's very little to do or see outside of some mini games scattered throughout, a multitude of currencies which all interlink to lock story progress, and fast travel can only be unlocked via fishing. So that's interesting as well. And even the fishing game seems pretty poorly done. I don't think you can actually fail it. I think you just need to play it enough to catch everything. So you might fish and get a fast travel item your first time. Who knows? But it's it's so repetitive, and I think you've
Mm.
probably started to notice this even by hour 5 or 6. There's a handful of things that you just do in different orders
Yeah.
outside of
So,
the traversal of the main world.
so the main world to me was initially quite fun, like because you can zip around as Sonic. You know, there's a quite good sense of speed built into it, especially when you start hitting ricocheting pinball bumpers and grabbing in and flying through the sky and all that very freeform Sonic, but it has that inherent problem that all 3D Sonic problems, 3D Sonic games have had, is that as soon as any sort of precision is required, you're up shit creek essentially, because there is no precision in this game. Like if you need to platform to a certain area, it becomes an exercise in frustration. If you're not just using broad strokes of speed to get around, if you actually have to get to a certain very finite point, then it becomes a chore because it just doesn't work that well. Sonic was always about speed and momentum, and speed and momentum doesn't work with precision. And that's still the case here, and that still creates the same frustrations that all the 3D Sonic games have.
I think that's down to a few choices that they made. I don't know if you've noticed it, but one, there are fuck all shadows in this game. Like
Mm,
it is so hard to have any level of depth perception in this 3D world. So trying to figure out where the hell you are in relation to certain platforms sometimes is a straight up nightmare. Uh, so that's a weird graphical choice.
mm,
Even on the choppy as hell 4K mode on a PS5, there's still not enough shadows to aid depth perception. And that's something Mario games overcame on the 3DS
yeah,
by
yeah,
that point. Like 3D Land was wonderful, and they just sort of kept that up, and Sonic is not quite there with that. And yeah, like one of the things that becomes painfully obvious is just how much of the game is almost like a miniature cutscene you're watching happen. Like you jump on a rail, and the game is, and I'll touch on this in my review, but it sort of wrests control from you and then cedes control to you at really awkward
mm,
moments. So it'll suddenly overtake you bouncing around a bunch of things, and then you're in control again. And that's where some of those lines, because again, it's kind of like a Tony Hawk game. There are lines of objects designed in the world for you to traverse, some of which end in getting items which will unlock story progress, some of which is just to make your way around this world faster than using fast travel. And I guess to kind of be like, I'm running around a Sonic. This is really cool. But some of those lines are just literally trial and error.
yeah,
Like, you miss a window, oh, I guess I do it again.
mm,
And oh, I couldn't quite time that right, or oh, I shouldn't have air dashed there. I should have double jumped, or oh, I need to be a little bit faster to make that gap. And it's an exercise in frustration after a while. And I think tying into my sort of feeling that the first area, which is actually tends to be the first, fourth, and fifth area in my estimation. There's five areas total, and I think the fourth and fifth were cut from the first area and shuffled around to make the game longer because I think Sega shit themselves and they realized you'd probably wrap this up in 6 to 8 hours,
yeah,
and they knew they'd get slammed for it. So um, I think it's painfully obvious when some of the sections in the early game areas are exceedingly difficult compared to parts in other areas. So I guess some of that stuff wasn't rebalanced. Like particular lines where you would just be like, this is just not worth my time.
yeah,
And
yeah,
again, most of the time you're doing those lines, realistically, you get to a point where you're not doing it because it's fun anymore. You're doing it because the content is gated and you need whatever shiny is sitting at the end of that line to unlock the next thing, to unlock the next thing, to unlock the next thing, ad nauseum until you hit the final boss and wrap it up with a quick time event.
yeah, yeah. It's certainly starting to creep in that way with me, and one of the things that I guess not appreciated is the kind of upgrade system that's going on. Like, I don't mind the idea of upgrading Sonic skills and adding, and some of the fight, like the actual combat maneuvers that you upgrade, kind of feel worthwhile. But how you do it is it's super odd. You've got to kind of find this weird looking dude wherever he's hanging in the world and go and see him to upgrade. And that's just like, this is a video game. It's Sonic. We don't need to have a story reason as to why you upgrade. You got the points. Just let me upgrade from the menu. Don't force me to go halfway across the bloody map just to upgrade, because it just becomes the point where you don't bother doing it until you're in the region of that bloke to do it. And it's the same with his speed, with his with his strength, with his defense. It seems like I don't know. It just and I haven't noticed any perceptible difference when I've upgraded either. It's a very odd system.
Yeah, so those elders
Mm,
are the fast travel points when you unlock it
yeah.
through fishing. Uh, and like you said, it does seem really weird. My biggest issue around that, right, is to upgrade your attack power and your defense power. You just go and talk to the guy, and he loads you up. Like, does it
Mm,
all in one go. Oh, you got 20 of the strength things. Here's 20 strength points. When you go to the other elder who
yeah.
upgrades your speed and basically your HP, it's literally one level per time that you have to click through a bunch of dialogue and click through it again. So if you don't do that for a while, you could very well spend 10 minutes just sitting there clicking through a bunch of dialogue, allocating a single point to health and or speed at a time, which is bizarre considering the other guy just does it all in one go. And that's another thing where so much of this game just feels either half-assed or half-baked.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you just have it the same for both of those things? Because it is not fun clicking through a menu to upgrade your speed or rings.
No.
And then the
No.
the other guy lets you shuffle between those. Who is reallocating their speed points to their health points or vice versa? Because as you've said, very rarely does it make an appreciable difference because guess what? When you design an open world game, everyone has to be able to do everything at level 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how open world games end up working unless you severely gate the content and do some Assassin's Creed stuff like you should not go here right now, you will die,
Yeah. Yeah.
which Sonic Frontiers doesn't do. You just it might take you longer to beat an enemy, but it's never going to explicitly tell you you should probably go and upgrade.
Yeah. 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 And except for the help menu when you're loading between levels or something, it might pop up with a little message that says, "Hey, if you're finding it tough, why not upgrade?"
Yeah,
That sort of thing. Yeah.
it's pretty weird. And visually, it literally I would not be surprised if this has been hanging around Sega from the PS3 or 360 days. It has that look. It doesn't even look like a PS4 era title. The graphics are so sparse and the performance is so poor. I'm not
Yeah.
surprised I haven't sent out a single Switch code because I imagine it's going to be dog shit on that platform. Like,
Yeah, it's very weird because like like you said, I don't mind a sparse looking game if it runs well. But for some reason, like you can't tell me the PS5 isn't strong enough to run this at 4K and 60 frames. Like it should have more than enough power with what's being presented. I mean, I'm no developer, don't get me wrong, and the speed of Sonic obviously causes issues, but I don't feel like they're insurmountable issues. Uh, you can't tell me that Santa Monica Studios or one of Xbox's lead studios couldn't get 60 frames 4K out of what they've been given there with Sonic. It feels like bad programming.
yeah, just severely, I guess, under optimized. And the amount of pop in that's happening is,
Yeah.
again, it feels like a 360 or PS3 era game where, or even, before that, because pop in hasn't been a huge thing for a while. And
Especially with its SSD drives. Like pop in, even old games that had pop in don't have pop in anymore if you're running them off SSD drives. So,
yeah, there was,
I mean, really,
yeah, it's very odd. And just the general design of it, like Sonic looks pretty rough. Um, Everything just has this, and if you turn the blur effect off, it's even worse.
yeah.
Like I switch between that on and off as well, and the blur kind of blends everything together. But when that's off, it's just very stark how much pop in and other things are happening. And I could not imagine playing this in the 4K mode for any length of time. It's awful.
Yeah.
It just literally feels bad,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the graphics are not worthy of 4K. Like you're not missing anything by not playing this at 4K
Yeah. Yeah.
resolution
There's
because
no ray tracing. There's no
no.
fancy lighting. There's barely lighting. But
Uh,
yeah, it's rough.
and it feels like such an odd game to release after things like Super Mario Odyssey and Ratchet and Clank on the same platform as Ratchet and
Yeah.
Clank. Like they don't even have the excuse of, oh well, it's Switch hardware, they're basically 360 and PS3 games. Like it feels really out of step with the rest of this generation.
Yeah, and I guess that leads us to like the really odd place that we find ourselves in with Sonic, that the movie is actually the best Sonic property available. Like, who would have ever thought that a video game movie would be the best option for fans of the video
Yeah.
game?
It is it is it is a pretty weird situation, and I do feel the distinct lack of James Marsden in Sonic Frontiers. Um,
And Jim
Maybe if he
Carrey.
just yeah. So obviously this does not have the same voice actors as the Sonic movie.
No.
Um, I my son played it for a while today,
Mm,
uh, and his questioning were along the lines of, "Where's Tails? Is there anything else to do in this?"
yeah,
So even he being a huge like he loves the Sonic movies and he's played some of the older Sonic games,
yeah,
and this is just it's kind of I don't really know who it's for.
yeah.
Like
And I
I,
I
I
think that's Sonic's problem. Ever since 3D became the main, uh, they've never known what they're doing or what they're developing for. I think Sonic was always successful when it was simply about momentum speed on the 2D plane. And as I was saying pre to this talk, the most fun I had in Sonic Frontiers are the 2D levels. There are some traditional Sonic style 2D levels. And I thought they were great. They worked really well. They felt like playing old Sonic with fancy graphics. Give me old Sonic with fancy graphics. I'm all for that. But, like, then they ruin it by trying to do modern things with a character that's not equipped to do modern things.
and no, again, so basically, when the spoiler alert, when you finish the game, that unlocks as an option from the main menu called arcade mode, and it's just those 30 of those levels that you would
Yeah.
generally play at the shrines. You can just play them
Yeah.
in whatever order you want and just go through like that. Um, And like I said, those are some of the highlights. I find the 3D of some of those levels really annoying as well. Like when it
Yeah.
just sticks to the 2D sections, it's amazing.
Yeah. Really
Whereas
is.
Mario platforming was never as much about speed unless you're speedrunning as it, was like more
Adventure.
precise sort of things. Or at least in Mario, when you're going fast, like you can achieve that level of precision. I just think and I don't think Mario games have ever gone as hard in the 3D games with that focus on precision. They're
No.
always much friendlier,
And they
and
have
I think that
float moves and things that make jumps easier and, things like that where you can kind of hover a bit or, whatever to make life easier. They know
yeah,
that there's a balance between challenge and accessibility that they reach, whereas Sonic feels like they're so determined to be fast that everything else suffers because of it. And I get Sonic's brand is speed, but it can't come at the cost of enjoyability.
and like speed to what end? Because you get nothing out of going really fast in the open world outside of I don't have to play Sonic Frontiers for as long. Um, Whereas in the arcade sections, yeah, like you do get
Yeah,
items based on how quickly you complete the levels. Um, but you don't even need to do that to unlock progress. You can just go fishing a bunch to buy a bunch of those items. So
yeah.
I feel like someone at Sega was kind of like throwing everyone a bone, like, yeah, look, like that's maybe not going to be for everyone, but if you like this fishing mini game, you can buy your way through to the end of the game.
And in the
Because
world, so I didn't realize the fast travel. I'd done the fishing, like, but I never unlocked the fast travel bit with it. So, right, okay, that's good to know. But honestly, in a world we are in today with so many really good fishing mini games in video games,
yeah, it's literally a fishing quick time event. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
and it's such I feel like it's such a Sega move to still be pulling out mid boss battle quick time events that
yeah,
result in instant fail if you don't manage them and then have to refight the entire boss over again.
yeah. Well, it's just it's not even Sega. I think Sega. Yeah, their in-house developed stuff is just so trapped in the past a lot of the times, I think. They haven't really like, yeah, obviously the stuff they publish, is quite good. They've got Atlas, they've got, they've got the Yakuza franchise, they've got all those things, but their internally developed stuff is few and
Yeah,
far between these days, and it feels very archaic.
and I mean, I have to imagine this. I don't know what their expectations are for this title, but
Mm.
I feel like they're not going to be met
No,
in
no,
a few ways.
I think they're living in a fantasy world a bit with what people want, and
So you're about 6 hours in. You're probably off that first island and at least into
just
the second. Yep.
yeah,
So you're into the second
yeah,
island. Yeah. Okay. So you're literally about to redo the first island again. That is
yeah, and you get
going.
that feeling.
Yeah.
And honestly, if I don't pick it up again from now, I'm not upset. Like I don't feel like I'm missing anything. I feel like I've seen what the game has to
You
show me.
have.
So
Like,
yeah,
by the time you finish that first island, you have seen everything the game is going to throw at you, bar a few other mini games like the bizarre Sonic Spinball level that they throw at you, like quite far into proceedings, which is kind of never revisited again.
yep,
Uh, and yeah, so all these dire mini games that are just, like, oh,
throwbacks to the 2D
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, it's, knock a ball into this hole, reach this point in a certain amount of time.
And some of
Uh,
those map puzzles, like it's almost insulting to call them puzzles.
yeah,
Like,
no, it's literally like a PS1 era, like, you know, move this thing over here. It's just slowing you down and gating progress. It's not actually challenging you in any way.
and I mean it's kind of stealing that Ubisoft, climb a tower to reveal the map mechanic. But at least the climbing the tower, they made it like a platforming puzzle, which was different every time. Whereas this just seems to be the most stupid things. Either run to this point in a really long time frame and press a button,
Yeah.
or like honestly, I could get there and I'm 41-year-old and can't run. Uh, or press this button in sequence in a really easy way that it's just stupid. Like these are puzzles that and I mean I'm all for making puzzles accessible to people. These are puzzles that you see on Play School. This
I think the harder puzzles are in the combat where you have to,
Yep,
like, most of the combat is literally just figuring out what moves you need to do in what sequence to defeat the enemies. And
yep,
it's that same thing. And I feel like that's probably where the bigger challenge is just figuring out what you're supposed to do and executing it, which
yep,
is okay for a while, but even that gets pretty old after 15 hours. Like, it's it just feels like such old design philosophy in a way,
yeah,
and just the repetitive nature of it. Like, by the third area, I was like, okay, so I'm going to go in here. I'm going to get the character that I can't speak to unless I get the little magic character items that are scattered around, which generally take the longest to accrue.
yeah,
And then I have to find some gears to unlock shrines. I have to go into the shrines and complete the old school levels to get the keys. I need the keys to get the chaos gems. I need the chaos gems to beat the big bad to go to the next area.
yeah.
And like, that's cool for like 4 hours, and then to do it again in a slightly different biome, that's like the thing, there's not even like a huge difference. It's
No,
just,
there isn't. Well,
oh,
not
this
between the
one's a
first and the
desert,
second. Yeah.
and then this one's a volcano, and then, oh, this one's like the first one, but you literally,
Look, I
I
want
don't
to
know.
know the most important thing of any Sonic game. Is there a Vegas theme level?
The closest you're gonna get is in those vault
Yeah,
levels. Like, those are the things that actually have the old school themes. The open world is just
yeah.
sad.
See,
Like,
there
it's,
could have been something really cool done with a Vegas style open world for Sonic. Like I imagine that being a lot of fun. Certainly at least visually interesting.
well, anything's more visually interesting than Sonic Frontiers. And yeah, it feels like such a hugely missed opportunity, because there are some great points. There are
Mm,
points where you do feel like, oh, this is really awesome.
mm.
But like anything that's really awesome, if you have to do it so many times in such a short period, it's not awesome anymore. It's
Just
grating.
yeah, just a chore.
and and that's where Sonic Frontiers ends up for me. Um, the fourth area is like a complete rug pull. It looks like the first area, but is like a huge gameplay shift, I guess, because they realized, oh, if we just do the same thing again, people are going to be onto us. So let's slip in this other area that's slightly different, and then when they get to the next area and we make them do all that shit again,
Yeah.
it'll, a bit of a pace shift. So it's yeah, I don't know. I cannot in good conscience recommend anybody pony up $75 plus for this game. It's you're not getting your money's worth.
No.
Maybe an EB 7-day rental if you're that desperate, because you will finish this game in under a week.
Yep.
It's like it was 15 hours for me to roll credits. If you're a completionist, you could probably double that. But I feel like you'd also have to be a complete masochist to 100% Sonic Frontiers.
So, I mean, where does it leave Sega with Sonic? Like, I feel like there's other
Where does I
developers.
think Sonic need to leave Sega?
Yeah,
Like
that's what I mean. Like,
get that Sonic Mania team back and get them to do some more
to tune
Sonic
in. I
games.
think there's the possibility of a good 3D Sonic game. I just don't think Team Sonic can do it. I mean, I
I
think,
don't know. And then it comes to, is it just a fundamental, like, I guess, is it that you can't have 3D and have Sonic be Sonic? Is it
yeah,
just like the core, what makes Sonic Sonic is not possible to replicate in 3D unless it is entirely on rails? And,
yeah,
it's like an interactive film, which is part of a lot of the sections of this,
mm,
especially some of the boss battles as well. It just turns into a cutscene and you do a quick time event.
yeah,
Uh, or it's this really like imprecise,
yeah,
like rigid kind of. That's the thing. Like it's very rarely when you're failing a line is there an option to quickly get back on track.
yeah.
It's just, well, I
And,
guess I got to restart that again.
and you got to go all the way back. And yeah, yeah,
The one saving grace of those arcade levels is that it saves your progress. You don't have to achieve all of the little goals like beat it by this time, get all the
yeah,
red stars. You don't have to do those all in one run. That
yeah,
progress carries over. And whatever intern at Sega made the decision for that to happen, thank you from the bottom of my heart because it makes those sections so much more bearable.
yeah. Yep, yep. It becomes more like like you said, a Tony Hawk style thing where you try and get one or two of the goals done in one run instead of all 10 of them.
Yeah, you're
So
like, okay, cool. Well, if
I'll
I
focus
can,
on this, and
yeah,
yeah,
and playing those 30 levels is fun. And
yep,
I think where it wouldn't be fun is trying to nail all five in one go. That would be a
mm,
nightmare for some of those. But yeah, it gives you something to focus on. And the open world feels entirely unfocused outside of you just getting one of the five currencies to
yeah,
unlock some more story progress. And it does that old school open world trick of, we all remember the GTA 3 and Vice City days where it's like, oh, guess what? The next thing you have to go to is literally on the other side of the map.
yep, 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 yep. Just to pad that time out.
Yeah.
All right, then we might leave it there. We've kind of laid the boot in a bit to poor old Sonic here. Have we missed anything? Is there a final word on Sonic that you want to leave our listeners with?
It's it's a bad 15 to 25-hour game. It would be a great 6 to 8 hour game. And you'll read more about that in my review, but I feel like this is a very non-confident Sega making choices to the detriment of the game.
Yeah. And for me, I think, like I said, I'd be happy if I don't pick it up again, and it'll probably be the first game to get uninstalled when I need more space on my PS5 hard drive. Probably when God of War comes out next week.
I mean, even if you don't need the space, like,
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to look at this as anything but a disappointment from Team Sonic, sadly. And as much as we all have fond memories of 2D Sonic, those memories can only go so far, right?
yep.
All right, then. Thank you for joining us for another review discussion. You can find me at Huso81 on Twitter or Player2AU. Stephen, where can folks find you, and what have you got coming up besides Sad Sonic?
I'm Gorath 44,000 on Twitter for now.
On the
And
musky tweets?
and obviously player2.au that you can go to. Um, I'm not 100% sure. Probably got a few things I need to get done that have gotten pushed onto the back burner with Sonic Frontiers and PAX shenanigans and other things like that. A few things I'd like to get out. I think it's on sale right now. It might not be by the time you hear this, but Concordia Digital Edition is a great digital adaptation of an amazing board game, which I am slowly cobbling a review together for. So if you're in that way inclined, go and buy that now.
Awesome. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff from the Play On press event that Jess and I went to. Dead Island 2, System Shock, and Scars Above previews coming, as well as my review of the Valiant, which should hopefully all come out this week if I find enough time to finish them all off. So thank you for joining us on this review discussion. Make sure you head over to player2.au, check out our news, reviews, previous podcasts, videos, opinion pieces, and a whole bunch of other random stuff that we decide to put up there. We do have a YouTube channel which you're maybe watching this on. So subscribing and liking helps us out. Same goes with the podcast feeds. And we do have a Patreon if you're that way inclined. But honestly, just enjoy our stuff. That's all we ask. Thank you for joining us for this review discussion. And we will catch you next time over at Player 2. See ya.
Bye.